Hi again. This is Organizing Themes in Development Part 2, where I'll be going over cognitive learning and systems theories, starting with cognitive. If you haven't watched the first one, you may want to watch that one first, because I'll be using the same kind of structure in this video. All right, so cognitive theories. The phenomena they're explaining obviously is cognition. And what is cognition? Basically, it means organizing and making meaning of learning and new experiences. The assumptions that are held in cognitive theory. Well, when new information is obtained, this theory holds that that information is transformed into logical and systematic capacities for reasoning and problem solving. This is done through the formation of schema, which is a structure or organization of thoughts, and operations, which involves mental manipulation of schemas and concepts. The prediction is that when we're exposed to new information, we seek equilibrium through assimilation, which involves incorporating new information to existing schema. For example, if you know that four-legged animals are dogs and you see a four-legged animal, you incorporate that animal into your dog schema. Very oversimplified example. So we seek equilibrium through assimilation or through accommodation, which means altering structures in light of new information. So to continue with the dog example, let's say you see another four-legged animal, but this one is smaller and has pointy ears. Well, this one maybe isn't a dog. Now this is a cat. And so now you have accommodated by indicating in your mental schema that four-legged animals could be dogs or cats. That would be an example of accommodation. One of the main theories that's looked at with cognitive development is Piaget's. And Piaget's theory states that children and adolescents demonstrate qualitative change by systematically exploring and manipulating the environment in order to understand it. He described 4 stages of distinctly different thinking processes, and each stage involves a unique capacity for organizing and interpreting information. You can see the 4 stages here. What's important to remember about this theory is that it views the developing person not as a passive receiver of knowledge, but as someone that actively engages with their environment in order to learn, to create meaning, and to access different pieces of information. Now, you might be wondering, again, like we did with with the evolutionary theory, why cognitive development matters for therapy. You're not a teacher. Why do you need to know this? Well, it's important. So consider, for example, how you might approach processing a traumatic experience with a 5-year-old client compared to one who's 15. Okay, so a 5-year-old is pre-operational and is going to use symbols and words to represent objects, but not really be able to reason logically. So if you wanted to try to complete a written trauma narrative with this child, that's really not appropriate and isn't going to be very successful. So instead, you might use something like dolls or art in order to process that trauma. Alternatively, the 15-year-old who's in the formal operations stage can think logically and abstractly and would be better suited to something like creating a trauma narrative. All right. Another cognitive theory that's important to consider here is Vygotsky's. And Vygotsky is different from Piaget in that he rejected the stage model, right, the 4 different distinct stages of cognitive development, and instead explained changes in cognitive development as highly dependent on social interactions and culture. It suggested that a person's cognitive development is really significantly influenced by their surrounding environment and culture. And development can't be understood without reference to the social and cultural context in which the person is embedded. Cognitive development then comes from social interactions that guide or scaffold learning within what is called the zone of proximal development. So whereas lower mental processes involve natural physiological processes that are present in infancy, higher mental processes like language and meaning emerge through interactions in the ecological context. For example, access to environmental tools like computers, cars, and symbolic counting systems help people change and organize the way that they think about the world. For example, it's highly unlikely that you've memorized people's phone numbers anymore, thanks to cell phones that we always have with us, right? You don't have to anymore. And that is a change in your cognitive development. All right, switching now to learning theories. Learning theories are looking at behavior and learning, obviously. And the assumptions being made, well, they suggest that learning takes place as a result of observation and imitation. And the prediction is that what is observed and reinforced will be repeated. One of the main theories in learning is the social learning theory by Bandura. And this emphasizes the role of observational learning or modeling on development. It suggests that we learn by three different factors. First, environment, which involves watching and learning and being exposed to social norms. Then cognitive, which involves internalizing expectations of what is acceptable or not. And then behavioral, which involves modeling, practice, and experience of success. We are using social learning in therapy when we teach a client a new skill, model it for them, assign homework to practice, and provide praise when they do it. Another important theory is operant conditioning, and this suggests that learning and hence development is driven by reinforcement. There can be two different kinds. First, positive, and this is what happens when something pleasurable is presented after the behavior occurs so that it is reinforced. For example, giving a child a sticker when they make a positive choice like sharing. Another example comes from the Skinner box. A hungry rat was placed inside the Skinner box, and rats learned that by pressing a lever, they got food. And so that pressing of the lever was reinforced and they continued to do it. Another form of reinforcement is negative, okay? And this can sometimes be confusing, but basically it means that the behavior is reinforced because an aversive experience stops or is removed after they engage in that behavior. For example, someone who stops nagging you when you actually do what they've asked you to do is a form of negative reinforcement. In the Skinner box example, negative reinforcement involves subjecting the rat to an unpleasant electrical current that would stop if they touched the lever. So they learned that by touching the lever, the unpleasant current went away, and that is negative reinforcement. Okay, the final theories that we're going to look at in this particular lecture here are systems theories. And system theories describe and account for characteristics of systems and the relationships among the component parts found within the system. Okay, one thing to keep in mind with these theories is that they do not suggest that you can understand the whole person by looking at the different parts separately. Instead, you actually need to consider how all the different systems interact and influence each other. These theories embrace the complexities of development and acknowledge that development can be large, like stage-like changes, like learning how to walk. They can be small, like learning different strategies and problem solving. They can be continuous, like language development. You're always learning new words, right? And they can be reversible, like memory, which starts to go backward a bit in older age. So sometimes the metaphor is used of a vine where it's propelled by its own natural processes, but its path and its form can be created by the forest it inhabits or by its environment, right? And so the main systems theory that most folks have been exposed to by this point in psych study, sorry, fumbling over my words here, is the ecological systems theory, which was developed by Bronfenbrenner. And this theory suggests that individual development takes place in a complex set of interconnected systems, which you can see in this graphic here. And some of these systems are interacted with directly by the developing person, so the family, the school, or the workplace. And this would include the microsystem and the mesosystem in this particular graphic. And then there are some other systems that impact the person indirectly because of interactions between systems and also because of things like policies, resources, or expectations that influence their lives. And these include the exosystem, macrosystem, and chronosystem. Okay. Now, the quality and effectiveness of the immediate environment is going to depend on the larger context, right? And this is where things like poverty and neighborhood resources and things like that start to affect a child. Systems theory has also been applied to the development of the development across the lifespan through what is called the relational developmental systems theory. And this emphasizes the bidirectional interaction between person and context across time. This is important because it suggests that we can impact a developing person by impacting the systems they interact with and vice versa. All right, so that is it for this lecture. Just a reminder that this is just an introduction to these theories, and this and what you read in your text is a lot of information. So if you want to take a deeper dive into some of these theories, I've also linked some videos on Canvas that I thought were especially helpful and that go into this in more depth. And of course, in class, we'll work on organizing this information in a way that clarifies things further and helps you begin to apply it more directly and in a way that makes sense. But if you're feeling a little overwhelmed, that's okay. This is a lot of information. Take another watch through, look through your text again, and don't worry, we'll discuss it more in class. So I look forward to answering your questions and applying these theories this week. Thanks for listening.